Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Brian from Kingdom Hearts Cross Nation, and today is part 2 of the Fill Cup Help series. Woo! Yeah! Woo! But yeah, just like the last episode, I am continuing the short 3-part episode for completing the Fill Cup. And today we're going to be covering stages 1 through 8 for the Fill Cup. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. So for stage 1 of the Fill Cup, we have a power type enemy that we're fighting against. So because of this, I'm going to be doing the most logical thing, which is where I'm going to be trying to use a purely, magic setup. So I'm going to be using the counterpoint just to go pure magic and just, you know, fight against what's super effective. So for the first stage, this is the setup that I actually used. As you can tell here in my setup, I have Illustrated Kairi, Zexian B, Pooh and Piglet. I have HPO, Halloween Donald B, and the Trickmaster. And in terms of traits for my medals, because traits are very relevant when you go into these type of events, especially for later on in the Fill Cup. Having the right traits can help out tremendously compared to having just like a generic medal. But the only traits that is worth noting for my setup, for my medals, is the fact that my HPO has extra attack, which is common, and that my 2nd, 5th, and 6th slot have the -60 ground defense trait on them. And to be honest, the -60 ground defense trait is probably going to be the most useful most useful trait that you can use in the entire Fill Cup. There are times where the -60 air defense trait is also going to be very useful, but for the most part, most of the enemies tend to be on the ground. So if you can try to use medals that have that trait, damage medals that have that trait, those will be the most useful for you. So I had that in mind when I was going about making my setup. And as you can tell here, I'm kind of gunning for, because of the fact that we don't have tier 5 and up medals, we're severely lacking a bunch of the super good buff medals and even debuff medals that we had for the higher tiers. So I'm kind of trying to make up for it with this setup. So right here I have Illustrated Kairi, who gives me 3 tiers of strength buffs. Zexian B gives me 1 tier of strength buff, and Pooh and Piglet gives me 2 tiers of strength buff. So essentially I'm getting 6 tiers of strength buffs, and then I'm just using damage medals. HPO is not a damage medal, but for this setup, because of how low level these stages, it's essentially doing enough damage where it's kind of like considered the damage medal. But just keep in mind that the HPO is not there for damage specifically. Although you could say that because of the fact it does have the attack boost 3 max and special gauge 1 skill on it, and it's fully gilted, on top of having the new booster that we just got last night too, it can be kind of considered somewhat of a damage medal depending on how you use it. But without further ado, let's get into the actual stage and get into this. Alright, for stage 1, we're just going to jump right into it. Yes. Alright, so when you're going into stage 1, there's a few things you want to keep in mind. Oops, why did it go out like that? Alright, so the first thing you want to keep in mind when you go into stage 1 is the fact that this guy right here, this like Halloween Town looking enemy right there, you want to keep in mind those 3 hit counters that he has. Now, granted, it's stage 1, it's pretty easy, or at least it should be easy, unless you're like a really new player or something. So, he's not going to really give you too much of an issue, or at least he shouldn't. But just in case, just to be thorough, I'm going to go over basically the strategy. So, for most of the Fill Cup event, because most of the stages end up having some type of counters for one or multiple of the enemies, for the most part, you want to focus on using single target medals as much as possible. And you can see that in my setup. So if we look at my setup right here, okay, we have my Illustrated Kairi, that's single target, Pooh Bear single target, HPO single target, and Trickmaster second target. Zexion B and my Halloween Town Donald B, they are random. So it's like, I can't control them, but for the most part, they work out anyways for what I end up trying to do. But for the most part, if you can stick to single target medals as much as possible, that will typically help you out in general in the long run. Thankfully, some of the good buff medals and debuff medals that we have right now for tier 4 and lower are already single tier. I'm not single, are already single target and are also the buff and debuff medals that we want and need. So that's a good thing to mention. So let me actually show you this now instead of just keep babbling. So for right here, I'm just gonna target on. I'm gonna focus my buff medals on these guys, and for this level, I'm actually gonna focus on trying to take out these guys out first too, just because I don't really have a need to do so, but it just makes it a little bit easier. Like, I don't know, I just can. So, but if you want to, you could probably try taking out this guy too first. Once you're done buffing up your buffing up your medals and such. But the main thing you want to keep track of is the fact that you want to try to use your buff single target medals on these guys first, and then you use your damage medals to kill whoever you want. So let's get on with this. So we're gonna use Zexion B. Yeah, see, like Zexion B, he's just ridiculous. I'm gonna use Pooh Bear. Pooh Bear's gonna actually kill this guy right here. And I think HPO should be able to kill this guy by himself. Yeah, see? Grab this. Hey. Alright, so now we're gonna go to stage 2. So for stage 2, just like for every stage, I'm gonna be trying to using Keyblades that are geared towards being super effective towards the enemy that we're facing. So in this case, that just happens to be a speed type enemy that we're facing. So, without further ado, I'm going to be using the Fenrir Keyblade for this stage. I believe this is the setup that I used. Nope. So I'm going to quickly change my setup real quick, because this is not what I used when doing this stage. Alright, so this ended up being my setup for stage 2. I have Axel B. I have Axel B, which raises his power strength by 3 tiers for 1 turn. Or however many turns. I believe it's just 1 turn. Illustrated Kairi again. I have Illustrated King Mickey, who I believe he just raises PSM strength by 1 tier for 2 turns. Yeah, and he just inflicts more damage than I have my HP. I don't have any skill on him. He's just plain old, gilted, Illustrated King Mickey. I have the Destroyer Behemoth, which is gonna be one of the best medals that you can use for this event. All of those tier 4 raid event medals that we've gotten the last like few months or so, those are gonna be very, very relevant. They ended up being some of my main sources of damage for the entire event. So if you have these medals, these are gonna be super useful for you, and I highly recommend you use them. But aside from Destroyer Behemoth, I also have the Sora and Riku of Meow Wow medal. And as you saw as well, for my Spirit medal, I have Psyx B. Now, the only traits to keep in mind for my setup that you may not have is the fact that my Axel B over here has extra attack. So I'm not just getting +3 power strength, I'm getting +6 power strength, which is a lot more potent than what it seems like at first glance. My Destroyer Behemoth, if you happen to see my last video, I kind of already mentioned some of the traits that some of my medals have already. But my Destroyer Behemoth has the -60 ground defense trait on it, which makes it super potent and just like helps melt a lot of the enemies. But for the rest of my medals, my Illustrated King Mickey, my Soren Riku, and my Psyx B for my Spirit medal, they have the -60 aerial defense traits on them. So I can easily just like melt away enemies when needed. And the fact why, and for this level, for stage 2, I have the aerial defense trait on most of my medals because of the fact that well, the main target is a flying copter. So it just makes sense, like, oh hey, it's a flying copter, let me see what medals I have that have the -60 defense trait on it, and try to use those if I can. If it doesn't work out, then I can use more like legit stronger medals if needed. But what you should try to go for, rule of thumb for all of these stages, is when you can, try to use medals that have the -60 defense traits on them, because they should help out a lot compared to most other medals in the long run. But without further ado, let's get into the second stage of the Pill Cup. So one thing to notice about this stage is it's actually really easy. Crap. So I want you to see, like, there's nothing special about this stage. There's no counters or anything you need to be aware of. It's just literally, you can just straight up just beat face on this stage. So I'm just going to go ahead. I can actually just keep it on auto, to be honest. These guys, these first 3 medals are just there for buffs. Look at that. I didn't even, like, have to get it to my 4th medal. Grab this real quick. Okay, thank God. Moving on to stage 3. For stage 3, we have a magic enemy, and it's technically it's also an aerial enemy. So if the aerial defense traits will work for this type of enemy. So for this type of enemy, because it's magic and it's aerial, I end up using the Sleeping Lion Keyblade. Let me get to it. Okay, so I used the Sleeping Lion. And this is the actual setup that I ended up using. I didn't use Halloween Sora A the first time, but I realized later on that I could probably use this better than what I originally had. I originally had the Musketeer Mickey instead of Halloween Sora A, but I realized later on that I think Halloween Sora A might be, or at least my Halloween Sora A might be a little bit better. My Sora A happens to have the -60 aerial defense trait on it as well. But this is the setup that I went with. So before I forget, I want to show you guys what traits my medals have again. I'm going to try and do this for almost all of any new medals that I happen to introduce, so that way you guys are at least aware and you can make better decisions when you're making your setups. And one thing I want to notice, so we already know about Kairi, so forget about here. We have extra attack on slot 4, which is my Casual Roxas. Now, that ends up being really useful for me sometimes because of the fact that Casual Roxas reduces speed defense by 2 tiers. And having extra attack really helps out a lot because for a tier 4 medal to reduce anything by 4 tiers, which is essentially what it's doing with that extra attack, that's just really good. That's pure value. Any type of buff medal, honestly, that has buff or debuff medal that has extra attack on it is just really good. But it's especially apparent for medals that are tier 4 or lower. If anything tier 4 or lower does any type of buff or debuff by 2 tiers, it's typically a lot more valuable than the others. Now that might sound obvious, but I'm saying this because of the fact that there's not nearly as many medals that do that compared to medals that only buff or debuff by 1 tier instead of 2 tiers. So that's worth noting. So aside from the extra attack on the Casual Roxas, my slot 3, my Roxas B medal actually has the -60 ground defense trait on it as well. My damage medals have the -60 aerial defense trait on it, and that's pretty much the only traits that are relevant in terms of the Fill Cup. I'm using the Twilight Thorn medal for as part of my main damage medals. And just like I mentioned before, and you'll kind of be seeing me use these medals like pretty much the entire event. But these, I cannot iterate just how much like these raid event medals, how freaking like ridiculously good they are for a tier 4 medal. Like they're just really good. Even sometimes now, every once in a while, for like random modes I'm doing in like regular events and stuff, I will still use these medals because their multiplier is high enough that I'm like, yeah, hell yeah, I want to use these guys. They're really strong. So I cannot iterate enough how much I recommend using these raid event medals if you have them. You should have guilted them while they were up. If you didn't, shame on you. If it was simply because maybe you're new to the game and you weren't capable, then that's not your fault. But you should have at least tried to have gotten at least one copy of the medal, because they're just too good for their tier. So we're just going to go ahead and start the stage 3. Use my Sleeping Lion. Alright. So let's go. Alright. So, right off the back, we start off with a healing guy who starts with 3 counters. And it's gonna be it's basically gonna be just like the same type of strategies that's like in stage 1. Try to focus all of your main buff medals and debuff medals on this guy, or at least the buff medals on this guy. And then once you want to start actually using your damage medals, you can either take out this guy first, or you can take out the healing guy first. Either one. I chose to do the bell guy first because in my mind, I would much rather take out this guy first, so that way even if I happen to mess up by accident for some whatever reason, and this guy happens to run out of counters and heal the team, if he's taken out, there's no team to heal and he just heals himself, and at the very least I can just try and kill him again. But yeah, without further ado, let me just actually go ahead and do it. So I'm going to use Kyrie, hit the bell guy. I'm using Aladdin for buffs, hit him too. At this point, we're already doing pretty decent damage. These are my skills, by the way, if you want to take a quick look at them. In case you didn't see my last video, just to reiterate, on my Illustrated Kyrie, I have Defense Boost 1 Max because of the fact that at the time I just didn't have... I was kind of running out of defense medals that I wanted to use. I preferably wanted to use Defense Boost 2 Max on her because I wanted the consistency at the very least. But I only had 1 max, so that's what I had to deal with. My Aladdin and Abu has the 3 max and Gauge 2 skill on it. Roxas doesn't have anything. Casual Roxas has a Attack Boost 3 or Attack Boost 2, just a normal one. No skill on the Halloween Sora A. And then my Twilight Thorn has 3 max and Special Gauge 1. Because I am not looking to spend 6 gauges on this, especially in a Fill Cup event where we're kindly reminded how much we need to actually take care of our SP gauges this time. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and use Casual Roxas here. He does enough damage to take out the bell guy, and then from here on out, I can just go ahead and just murder the healer. Woo! We cleared stage 3! Alright, let me get this. Alright, so stage 4 is honestly really easy. It's almost exactly the same as stage 2, to be honest. We're fighting a power type, ground type enemy this time. We're going to go back to using the counterpoint setup. I'm actually not going to change anything this time. I'm using the exact same setup as I did before. Because in this stage, there's nothing really special about the stage that I really need to mention. Because there's no counters, there's nothing special going on. You can literally just speed phase. Like, I'm just gonna leave this on autopilot because there's nothing really special for me to mention or to do. So I'm just gonna just let it do its thing. I do want to like mention just how much damage HPO can actually do. Like, it's not meant to be a damage medal, but under the right skills and buffs and stuff, it can still do a pretty decent amount of damage. So now for stage 5, I'm actually gonna... Oh, let me say. So we're fighting against a speed ground type enemy this time. I'm gonna go back to the Fenrir setup. However, this time I'm gonna switch some things around real quick. So I'm actually gonna take off the Illustrated King Mickey, and I'm gonna grab some other medals. Because of the fact we're fighting ground defense, or we're fighting ground enemies, I want to use medals that have the ground defense trait on them. Like, for example, my Master Ericus. My Master Ericus has the ground defense trait. He also has a very freakishly high multiplier for a tier 3. So, yeah, he's pretty good for my setup. Realistically, I should swap my Psy-XP, although I don't really have to for right now, because I don't even think I make it to my 6th slot for this stage. We'll see in a sec. So we're gonna go into this. This is the setup that I used when fighting the stage. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this real quick just to help refill my gauges. Alright, so one thing I want to mention about the stage is going right into it. The first thing that you can notice right off the bat about the stage is the fact that we have this clown guy right here. This clown guy has 3 hit counters on him. Now, compared to the last few stages where we had the hit counters and they just kind of like hit you, for this stage, you like absolutely cannot have this guy hit you at all costs because of the fact that what happens when he actually runs out of gauges during your turn and he hits you is the fact that he actually debuffs your strength, your general strength, and your PSM strength like a lot, like very significantly. And let me give you an idea of how significantly I mean. Okay, so let me take a look at my setup real quick. So for my setup, because of the fact that my Axel B has extra attack and I have Illustrated Kai right here, I have a total of, by the end of these 2 medals, I have a total of +6 power strength and +3 general strength. And that's actually quite a lot already for just the first 2 medals of a setup that's using just tier 4 and lower. And that alone should give you an idea of how much like buffs I'm getting. So when I say that this clown guy right here is actually debuffing you more than I can buff right there, that's saying something. Like I'm still in the negatives in terms of debuffs and stuff. So it's just like if I get hit by that guy from his attack, by the time I even make it to like these medals right here, they're gonna do almost no damage or very little to no damage because of the fact that I got debuffed instead of having buffs. So you want to try to avoid that at all costs. But in general, the strategy is essentially the same as it is for the other past few stages that had counters on some of the enemies, which is where you want to focus on attacking the cannon guy over here for your buff medals, and then when you want to actually use your damage medals, you could take out either one that you please. Although it's worth mentioning that for this stage, it might be actually better to try and take out this guy first because his HP is a lot lower compared to the cannon guy over here. So that's something worth noting. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. This is actually one of the few times I actually don't like having extra attack on a medal, especially since Axel B is a random hit medal with 11 hits, which means I'm kind of guaranteed I'm going to hit the clown guy each time I use the medal, but I really need the buffs. So from here on, at the very least, I can focus on attacking the cannon guy with my buff medals. I'm going to use Sora, Riku, and Meow on the cannon guy because it's not my strongest medal. I'm going to use this one on this guy right there because I want to make sure he's dead like at all costs. So now we're just going to focus on taking out the cannon guy. Alright, inside XP. And there we go! We beat stage 5. Alright, now we're going to go on to stage 3. For stage 3, this stage is honestly nothing too special. I'm essentially going to be doing it almost the exact same as stage 3. So I'm going to be using the Sleeping Lion for this setup, or for this stage, because he is a magic flying enemy. I'm not changing my setup. I was still able to beat it with the same exact setup. So we're just going to jump right into it. Alright, so for here, we're going to go here. And just like the other previous stages, like I keep mentioning, this guy, the poison guy, has 2 hit counters. Just like the others, you want to focus on attacking this guy first and then using your damage medals to take out the poison guy. And just like the last stage, the previous stage we just did, I think that was stage 5, because of the fact that the poison guy has so little HP over here, we can actually try taking him out first with our damage medal, and then we can focus on taking this guy out last. So let's just go into it. So we're going to use Kyrie here, buff. I'm going to use Aladdin and Abu, more buffs and a little bit of damage. I'm going to use Roxas B. It's one of those moments I wish Roxas B wasn't an AoE medal. But at this point, Roxas should be able to kill... Yeah, it kills the poison guy along with it. And I'm just going to put on auto from this point on. So applying more debuffs. Woo! Look at that damage. Oh no. So right here you can see that my defense boost 1 max skill trait actually came in handy right there. Because if we look at my health, I mean, I still have a good chunk of health, but if I didn't have that defense boost 1 max skill there, I might be at very little health, if not no health, or I might be dead very potentially. So even like skills that might seem like crap at first can actually still be very useful. At the very least, it provides consistency in your setup, even if you have like defense boost 4 or like other high defense skills on your setup. Having some level of consistency can help out a lot sometimes, like in this case, for example. But I'm just gonna go ahead and finish this guy off. Woo! We finished it off. Wasn't quite the way I initially finished him off, but hey, I still beat it. I'm gonna grab this real quick. So we're going to stage 7. Stage 7 is a power ground type enemy, so we want to focus on using a magic type setup. I'm gonna be using the counterpoint again, and honestly, like this setup ends up just being good enough. I honestly don't need to do anything, so I'm just gonna continue using the same setup here. Alright, now there is something worth noting for this stage. And you can probably tell right there that we have the 2 of the Halloween guys and they both have the 3 counters on them. So essentially just like the last few setups, but even more relevant this time, we want to focus on using our medals, especially our buff medals, on the fat guy first as much as possible, and then when we want to go for damage, we can focus on taking out these guys first. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So illustrated Kyrie on the fat guy. I can't do anything about the randomness of Zexing B. Okay, cool. We're gonna use Pooh and Piglet here on the fat guy. I'm gonna go ahead and use HPO on the fat guy as well, just to get that defense just in case. There we go. And now Halloween Donald is random, so I can't do anything about that. And from here, I'm going to kill one of the 2 Halloween guys. So I'm actually going to kill this bottom one. Boom. There we go. We killed it. See, now you can see that the defense from my HPO on top of having my defense boost 1 max skill came in handy because I didn't take too much damage this time. But if I didn't have the HPO defense, I might have taken a very significant more amount of damage. I could have possibly died, like even with the defense 1 max, like. So that's very worth noting. Like in this situation, the HPO probably saved me a lot more compared to the defense boost 1 max. So it's something worth trying out. Having both though is typically preferred. But we're gonna go on with the thing. All right. So we almost killed the Halloween guy, but we didn't quite. We still have. Luckily, he didn't do too much damage. And we're just going to go ahead and finish him off. Alright, so he's gone. And we're going to finish off this guy. And there we go. He's finished off. Alright, so now we're on stage 8. This is going to be the last stage for this episode. We are fighting the Trick Master Omega for this stage. He is a magic ground type enemy. Now this is where potentially a lot of you are starting to get stuck on, because of the fact that for these next 3 stages we're fighting the Omega raid bosses in a sense, although with less health. So for this setup, I'm going to be using the Sleeping Lion setup again this time. However, I am going to be switching around the setup a little bit. So if I go here, So this time for this setup, I am actually gonna swap out my Aladdin Abu for a different medal. This time, I'm actually gonna swap it out for Lucifer. And in case you weren't here for my last video, I mentioned that my Lucifer has the defense boost 4 skill on it, which ends up being very relevant on this stage. And as well as the fact that my Lucifer also has extra attack, so instead of just buffing my strength by 2 tiers, I'm actually buffing it by 4 tiers. And he's a zero gauge metal, so I'm essentially getting buffed by 4 tiers for strength for free. Now, granted, there is a drawback with Lucifer, which is the fact that I'm also debuffing my own defense by 2 tiers each time. But I am willing. But here's the thing: because of the fact that I have defense boost 4 on top of the boost 1 max, it kind of helps make up for my defense loss that I've inflicted on myself. So you try to keep those type of things in mind when you're using medals like Lucifer. In case you're not aware either, general strength and general defense are typically better buffs to have on yourself compared to attribute buffs, because of the fact that general strength and general defense scale along with you compared to attribute buffs and debuffs and stuff. Those are very static. They only buff and debuff by a certain amount, whereas general strength and general defense scale along with you and your medals. Alright, so I'm actually going to go ahead real quick and go refill the gauges on this Keyblade, because the fact that I want to be at full amount of SP gauges before I jump into it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick, so I'll be right back. Alright, so we're back. And just like before, so I refilled some of my gauges already. It's at 16 instead of like 7 or 9 or whatever it was. And I'm going to go ahead and take on the stage. So let's get into it. Now, this stage is actually kind of hard a little bit. There's actually a few things about the stage that make it kind of difficult. The first thing is, you probably notice, is the fact that he already starts off with a ridiculously large amount of health compared to any of the other enemies from the previous stages. One thing you also need to know is that there's actually 2 things you need, like 2 or 3 things you need to know about this stage that you won't know until you're actually fighting him. Is the fact that sometimes when he attacks, like after you've like done your rotation on your Keyblade, sometimes he'll actually heal himself quite a significant amount. So being able to last in the late game, like chances are you might have to end up being able to survive 2 or 3 turns. Like that's very possible because of the fact that he heals himself and he does a lot of damage too. Now, one thing that is also good to be aware of is the fact that he drops a lot of SP orbs on his own. Like, even if you don't have any of the AP plus, even if you don't happen to have any of the AP plus skills on your medals, he on his own already drops a lot of SP orbs. And from what I can tell, you're pretty much guaranteed to refill at least 1 SP gauge for every single medal that you use and attack with. Even if you don't like use the special ability of the medal and you just do a plain regular attack, from what I can tell, that alone will still refill you the same amount of at least 1 SP gauge. So that's something worth noting. It helps conserve the lets you reuse medals a little bit more often if needed. But this is my only enemy, so I'm just gonna put on auto for you guys to watch. We're applying my buffs at this moment. And by this moment, after the second Lucifer, I have +7 general strength. Now we're applying the debuffs. And I can see now I'm starting to do like quite a bit of damage. He started at like 120 bars, I believe. See, you can see I'm refilling my SP gauges very quickly. Like, that was like 2 bars right there. Bam. Alright, so luckily he didn't heal himself. He didn't heal himself that time. but I am low on HP. I was very unfortunate that my defense boost 4 skill didn't kick in this time. That's also something worth mentioning is the fact that I can only get past this stage by relying on my defense boost 4 skill that I have on my Lucifer over here. I have to have that trigger when on like these second lives and stuff in order to get past it. It's also worth noting too, you don't see it on any of my medals, but I came back to life like second chance, even though that none of my medals have second chance. And that's the fact that my pet, I actually have, my pet skill is at level 5, so I already have that second chance skill for my pet there. So I didn't need to have it on my medals. However, for those of you that don't have the pet skill on for second chance unlocked for level 5, you might possibly want to consider putting second chance or having second chance on one of your medals when going into this stage, and some of the future stages as well. But yeah, let's continue on. Alright, hopefully I can kill him this stage. I'm not sure we'll be able to, but we'll see if we can. Using Howling Sword. Okay. Twilight Thorn. Alright. Hopefully defense 4 boost kicks in. Dang it, it did not come in. Alright. So that means that this time we're going to have to actually go about it again until my defense boost 4 skill kicks in. So what I'm actually going to do for you guys is I'm going to kind of like fast forward and speed it up for you guys so that way you don't have to like watch it over again. I'm going to keep doing this until it kicks in and you guys can actually see me beat it. Alright, hopefully it kicks in this time. Oh, if you saw there, he actually healed himself a little bit, okay? So that's what I was talking about before. Luckily, my defense boost 4 skill kicked in this time, although I think I might have to still go another round because of the fact that he healed himself. So, let's see what happens. So at this point, you can start to tell that I'm starting to run out of gauges, which is not a good sign. So I'm kind of hoping I still have enough gauges for the next round. Okay, luckily he didn't heal himself this time, and my defense 4 skill kicked in this time as well. So now hopefully I can be able to just kill him this round. Alright, so for this attack, what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to lightly tap this guy with a regular attack because I want my Twilight Thorn to do most of the damage for this. So we're just going to tap him. It's going to refill my gauges, and now we're going to use Twilight Thorn. And hopefully this will kill him. Yes, it kills him. Alright! Let me get this. Give me the chest. Okay, cool. Alright, cool! That was it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the episode. My name is Brian for Team Cross Nation. If you enjoyed the episode and you would like more help in the comment section below, please let me know in the comment section below, and I can try providing whatever advice I can. But other than that, keep an eye out for part 3 that should be coming out fairly soon as well. But other than that, that's it for today, guys. My name is Brian from Team Cross Nation, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.